Shadow Broker, this is Operative Murat. We've had a momentary connection failure. Can you confirm status?
Operative Shora requesting update. Are we still online?
Shadow Broker, I've lost our feed. We're online and awaiting instructions.
Hey guys, I'm Jen from Sonic Cosplay, and I'm here in collaboration with BIOWARE and EA to announce something really exciting for this year's N7 Day. Have you ever wanted to cosplay someone from the Mass Effect universe but didn't know where to start? Well, we're excited to announce official character cosplay guides. BioWare is releasing official guides for many of your favorite characters in the Mass Effect trilogy. These guides have all the details and images that you need to start you on your Mass Effect cosplay journey. To celebrate this exciting release, I'm going to take you through a step-by-step tutorial on how I create my Liara T'soni cosplay. This tutorial is going to cover all aspects of making the costume in a way that's hopefully accessible at all skill levels. This tutorial will be broken up in two parts. The first will cover the costume and the armor making at a beginners to intermediate level, and the second part, for those of you who want a challenge, will be how to make and apply your own ASARI headpiece. Yes. Huge thank you again to BioWare and EA for making this happen, and without further ado, let's go and become an ASARI Prothean expert. For the jacket, I'm using a store-bought pattern and making a mock-up that I can alter and customize. Start by taking the pattern pieces and transferring it to some calico fabric. Cut them out and pin them according to the pattern's directions. Lay it over a dress form that's roughly your measurements. Pin and draw on your modifications to match Liara's design. This will be your new pattern. For Liara, I'm using a 4-way stretch fabric. I find it's more forgiving because you don't have to worry about the patterning being exact. I'm using the same type of fabric for the outside of the jacket and for the lining, so the weight and stretch of the fabrics are the same. Every pattern piece that I cut out of the white fabric gets repeated on the blue. Pin your pieces together and sew them. For stretch fabrics, it's important to use a zigzag stitch so your thread doesn't break when the fabric moves. Repeat for the lining as well. Once the bulk of the jacket is sewn together, try it on and check the fit. Layer the white over the blue to make sure they match up. Once you're happy, sew on the sleeves. To make the edges, take your blue fabric, cut it into strips and fold them in half. Place them in between the jacket and the lining, facing inwards. Sew and then turn the right way out. Leave the bottom of the jacket open for now. For the collar, fold it in half and sew the edges. Turn it right side out and use some interfacing inside to help it keep its shape. Pin the collar to the jacket, leaving a space at either end unattached. The collar will be inside the jacket when you're sewing. Hand sew to close the open edges. Even out the bottom edge of your jacket by hanging it off your dress form and cutting off the excess. Then create another framing edge using strips of blue fabric as you did down the front. To stabilize the tails of the jacket, take some stiff iron-on interfacing and place it inside the panels of the tails. I'm using an extra piece of blue fabric so you can't see the interfacing through the white fabric. Pin and sew the last open edge. For the silver panels on the jacket, I've chosen to use a stretch grey mesh, cut into measured strips. I like the texture it creates and how it moves, but you're welcome to use a silver fabric or even paint them on if you'd like. To attach them, I'm using an iron-on adhesive. I start by ironing it directly onto the mesh. For the smaller, darker panels, I use the interfacing to stick it to itself. For the more complicated pieces, iron on a sheet of adhesive and then cut it out after. Then take those strips, peel off the paper and lay them carefully on your jacket. Iron them on one by one. Keep your iron at a medium to low heat. Take it slow and carefully. To make the straps, take a piece of blue fabric, fold it in half and sew the long edge. Turn it right side out and face the seam outwards. You'll need a whole bunch of these. Now let's talk about the armor pieces. To pattern the armor, we're doing a tape cast. Take cling wrap and wrap it around where you want the armor to sit. For armor with more shape, you can pat it out with foil or foam until it's the shape you want. Get some tape and cover the whole area. Then get a marker and draw the design of the armor piece onto the tape. If the design is symmetrical, you can focus on one side of the design and then just flip it when we transfer it to the foam. Mark across where the joins will be and then carefully cut yourself out of it. Long sleeves and long clothing are a must. Cut that shape out of the masking tape and you've got your first armor template. Mark across any new joins and separate the pattern into different pieces. Number the pieces so it's easier to remember where they go. Repeat this process for all the armor pieces. You can transfer these patterns onto paper if you'd like them to be cleaner, and it's useful for symmetrical pattern pieces as well. Now take those patterns and transfer them to foam. I'm using 5mm and 2mm foam for this project. There are many hobby stores and cosplay websites where you can buy foam in sheets, but if you aren't able to source any, you can also find foam floor pads from most hardware stores or anywhere that sells floor padding. Cut the pieces out with a very sharp blade. You're going to want to sharpen your blade while you're working because foam dulls blades very quickly. Also keep in mind what angle you want the edges of your piece to be. A straight cut will glue flat to another piece and an angled cut will start a bend or cause a point. I'm using the 2mm foam or craft foam for the embellishments and details on the pieces. I'm also using it for any pieces that I want to keep very, very thin and very tight to the body. For glue, I recommend a contact cement when working with foam. You can usually get it from your local hardware store. I like to transfer it into a squeezy bottle so it's easier to use. Spread the glue in a thin, even layer across both sides of the surface and let it dry completely. Then just press the two sides together for an instant hold. Foam can be shaped with heat. Use a heat gun on any pieces that need a curve to them. Heat also has the added bonus of helping seal the foam, so it's a good idea to heat seal all your pieces when they're the shape that you want in general. I'm using a soldering tool to add more detail to the foam, but you could also use a Dremel for this part. Once you're happy with the shape, you can use gap filler to fill in any seam lines. You can get it from most hardware stores. If you're looking for more durability from your armour, then I recommend using Warbler. Warbler is a thermoplastic that's heavier and more expensive than foam, but it's more resistant to damage. The first Warbler method is the sandwich method, where you encapsulate a piece of foam completely. Heat both sides of the Warbler pieces until they are flexible and floppy. Then, with the shiny sides together, sandwich the piece of foam between them. Press around the edges so it fully bonds, but be careful because it will be hot. While it's still warm, shape it and cut away the excess. Because Warbler sticks to itself, any details can just be pressed on while both sides are still hot. The second Warbler method is with a single piece. Just wrap the edges of the Warbler around your foam so it grabs onto the other side. It's good to think about how your armor pieces are going to be attached. For the boots, I used D-rings and elastic to hold them together. For the arms, I used glue and Velcro. For the shin armour, I used a zip as a closure at the back. I used contact cement on the zip and on the shin guard, and glued them together with the bottom of the zip closed so they'd match up. I reinforced them with craft foam and hot glue. To make rivets, I just used beads of hot glue. Finally, tape off any parts that you don't want painted. Once you're happy with your pieces, it's time to seal them. Take all your armor pieces that are going to be painted silver and put them in a well-ventilated area. To seal, I'm using a sprayable rubber coating, which you can usually find at an auto shop. You could also use PVA glue or any other flexible coating. Leave them to set completely between coats. I ended up with about 5 coats on my pieces. Once they're smooth and set, spray them with a silver spray paint. Once your pieces are completely dry to the touch, you can start giving them depth and dimension with hand painting. Using black acrylic paint, fill in any areas you want to be the darkest. To weather your armour, water down your acrylic paint and then use a cloth to apply and wipe away the excess. Add scratches and detailing as you want. Add highlights using a little bit of silver paint. Use the same technique as the armour for the buckles and jacket embellishments. Spray all your armour with a clear sealer and it's ready to wear. Finally, add your warbler jacket corners by gluing them on with contact cement. For the thigh and front armour, I'm using foam and fabric. These pieces look very similar to Liara's jacket, so I wanted to make them out of identical materials. Make the foam armour in the same way as previously mentioned, then measure their size out onto your white fabric. Cut these pieces out, then spray them with a spray adhesive. When working with any other coloured fabric, contact cement works best, but it shows up on white fabric, so spray adhesive is the second best option. Wait until it almost dries and becomes tacky, then press the foam into the fabric. Carefully line it up so it lies flat on the foam. Cut off the excess and wrap it around the back of the foam. To make the blue edges, take craft foam and cut strips into shape. Cover with the blue fabric. Attach these using contact cement or hot glue. Glue the straps to the armour using contact cement. To make them wearable, use a D-ring or large safety pin to make an attachment where you can feed the strap through. Use Velcro to secure the strap to itself. Use contact cement to attach the buckles to the fabric. Using fabric paint, paint on the details. The ab armour is made in exactly the same way. To make the lining of the ab armour, cut out a base in fabric that is slightly wider than the armour pieces. Fold the edges over and use interfacing so it lies flat. Measure out the details and either draw or sew them in. Carefully paint in your details on your white armour. For the breastplate, use the same pattern from the tape cast. Cut that pattern out of white fabric and the mesh. Sew the white pieces together and measure out strips of grey fabric to line the tops and sides of the piece. Pin and sew on the grey pieces. Use the iron-on adhesive to hold the mesh to the fabric and then sew them together. Use contact cement to glue the fabric to the foam armour. Paint in your details. To attach the breastplate, glue some straps to the sides and top of the foam to basically create a bra. Use Velcro to attach. Use black fabric to cover the front, using hooks and eyes around the neck to hold it in place. Glue the top piece of armour to your breastplate. Attach your armour to the lining using glue, then use Velcro to attach it to your pants so it lies flat. Attach the end of the strap around the back of the pants. And now you have a full Liara T'soni outfit. To complete this cosplay, we're just missing one thing. It's time to make your own ASARI headpiece. To start, you're going to need a live cast of your head. The one I'm using is a 3D printed live cast from a scan, but traditionally they're done as an alginate or silicone mold that becomes an ultracal live cast. There are tutorials online if you'd like to know how to make your own. Sculpt your headpiece directly on the live cast. If you're going to work quickly, you can use a water-based clay, but I recommend using a sulfur-free oil-based clay. After you finish sculpting, you'll need to make a mold. This headpiece is done in a 2-part urethane mold. I'd recommend using Ultracal if you're planning on making latex casts. Make a wall down the center of your sculpt using clay, then carefully layer on your mold making material, being mindful of any air bubbles that might get caught. Once it's fully set, carefully take the 2 parts apart and clean out the mold. If done correctly, it should have picked up all the details from your sculpt. If using a urethane mold or similar, you can drill holes into the flange and hold the mold together with screws. Otherwise, you can use straps or clamps. Fill in any obvious seam lines with clay to avoid unnecessary seaming later. Pour thick latex into the mold to create a slush cast. I've drilled small holes into the end of the tentacles to ensure no air bubbles get trapped. Sponge the latex up the sides of the mold, being mindful of keeping the front seam as thin as possible. Coat the entire mold and allow to dry completely. To help the cast hold its shape, I do a couple of layers with latex and tissue. This should only be done after a couple of just latex layers to ensure that the details are picked up. After at least 3 or 4 layers of latex, we can remove the headpiece. Powder the entire inside of the cast so it doesn't stick to itself during removal. Then, using a fluffy brush, powder the edges and move slowly between the mold and the latex to detach it from the mold. You want to be especially careful with the front seam so that it doesn't rip or tear. Once the headpiece is removed, it's time to clean it up. Use a pair of scissors to trim off any excess latex or any bubbles. You can use a pair of tweezers to carefully remove the center seam down the front. Next, using no-tack Prozaide and Cabosil, also known as Cabopatch or Bondo, fill in any areas of imperfection using a small spatula. Before painting, seal the headpiece using a mix of Prozaide no-tack and acrylic paint, or Pax paint. Sponge that over the whole headpiece. Now use the same body paint that you'll be using on yourself and paint the headpiece. Taking a dark blue body paint, start adding depth to the semi-flexible, cartilage-based scalp crests. You can also do this with an airbrush if you have one. Take a black body paint and paint it into the darkest points of the headpiece. Use your original body paint colour to add highlights to any details of the sculpt. Lastly, use a silver body paint to add Liara's patterning to the top of the head. And now Liara T'soni is officially ready to be worn. Time to become an ASARI. If you have long hair, braid it and try to lie it flat against your head. Pin it with as few pins as possible. Put on the headpiece and line it up so it's symmetrical. Take Prozaide or another skin-safe adhesive and start under the middle of the headpiece. Once the glue is clear, carefully press the headpiece down onto your skin. Continue around the sides until everything is glued down, but leave the back of the headpiece open for better movement and ventilation. Now take some Prozaide no-tack and dab it onto the edges to seal them. Take the same glue and run it through your eyebrows to start blocking them out. Alternatively, you can use a water-soluble glue stick for this. Press powder into the glue to flatten it. To blend, take the thickened Prosade mixture and spackle it up into the seams. Use your finger to feel for the seam line. We're trying to create a smooth transition from the headpiece to our skin. I also use this on my eyebrows. Powder and repeat until you're happy with how it feels and looks. Using the PAX paint, blend from the headpiece down into your skin, concentrating on areas that are prone to oil or will be touching any fabric. Once dry, apply your body paint. I'm mixing mine with a mixing liquid rather than water. We don't need to paint any further than the bottom of the headpiece since it will be covered by the costume. Once you're happy with the base, start with the black body paint and paint in the connection of the neck tentacles and the contours of the face. Using a dark blue eyeshadow, contour your nose, eyes, lips, necklines, and cheekbones. For the eyes, press a purple eyeshadow all over the lid. Then take a black eyeshadow to contour the outsides of the lid, the inner brow, and the nose. Line your eyes using a liquid eyeliner with a simple small wing. And also line your waterline. Using the same eyeliner, mark out where you want your eyebrows to go. I like to draw dots and then connect them to help with symmetry. You can also use body paint to clean up the line afterwards. Liquid liner or gel liner can also make a good lip base. Line and fill your lips with a black liner and then press a purple eyeshadow on top. Using the same purple eyeshadow as the eyes, mix the shadow with some mixing liquid and dot it on to make freckles. Finally, add a coat of mascara. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Huge thank you again to BioWare and EA for making this happen. And if you want to cosplay from Mass Effect, the link to the cosplay guides is in the description down below. Happy N7 Day!